Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, how we doing?
Hey, we are here for another Game Time Tech, but this time we have a really kind of broad topic, which is the Olympics. Everybody has been watching over the last couple of weeks. We talked about the Olympics and of course, there's just a ton of technology that went into preparing for this year's Olympics, broadcasting this year's Olympics, the athlete functionality, everything, the viewer, everything that went into this year's Olympics. There's a ton of technology. We did cover a little bit early on a Game Time Tech pod. We had our fellow analyst, Will Townsend, on to help us talk about Cisco's part in the networking and
Yep.
with NBC. Also, I'm not going to pronounce this right. I think it's Orange. Am I right, Anshul?
Yep.
Orange, yeah.
Orange. They're slicing with Cisco private 5G at the Olympics. We went through that, but we'll link that in the show notes because we've talked about that. But as we're going through just kind of everything that went on throughout the Olympics, there were some standouts to us. And I guess, well, we've all been on here many times, but I guess I should introduce ourselves. I'm Melody Brew. This is Robert Kramer and Anshul Sag. And we are the Game Time Tech Crew. So all the topics that we wanted to, there's just a ton of them, so we had to kind of choose a few. But I think
only a few.
There's so many to talk about, right?
There's so many to talk about, but we kind of wanted to choose sort of some of the winners and some of the losers, and some maybe just are sort of interesting. And when I say loser, I don't really mean like thing, but there were some things that came up throughout the games that, maybe need to be paid more attention to next time around, or things that people pointed out. It's something, feedback is really important, and even especially actually in technology, you need to have that feedback. But Robert, you kind of sort of started to set the stage here with just the Olympic agenda to use AI to really accelerate change throughout the entire game. So do you want to first kind of talk about that in a general sense?
Sure. The Olympic Committee set, an agenda with AI to embrace it, more than they did in the past, to utilize AI, the technology throughout, so you see it being used in a lot of different ways, from the athlete's performance to fan engagement, analyzing the data. That's a big deal. The judging, the scheduling, the governance as well. So they set up, this whole agenda to utilize and embrace AI throughout all the Olympics. And I know we all have examples of this, but we all saw this as a big deal and how it was actually utilized, and it changed the way the Olympics were actually seen this year. From my perspective, I think it was really great. What do you all think about that?
So one of the examples was, I think we saw this throughout, because you can't miss it with the Omega clocks everywhere.
Yep.
I think that's so interesting because of just the margin of a win is now so small, where it actually can be a tie to the naked eye. But the Omega technology can actually get it down to a point where it's like a 100,000th of a second to actually determine a winner. So I think, in Olympics past, we would have had basically like a judge or a panel of judges would just determine a winner. And there wouldn't actually necessarily be agreement on that. I think that there are instances where that's happened in the past, where they're like, well, that person's the winner.
Good point, because the sensors and cameras are capable of 40,000 frames per second, and
yes,
Noah Lyles tied, for the 100. Well, he didn't tie, but
he won.
900 meter. He won by 5 thousandths of a second against the gentleman from Jamaica. but they both had 9.79 seconds. The only way it was determined the winner was exactly what you're saying, Mel, through AI, which is absolutely extraordinary that they could find the way to figure that out, because to the naked eye, you cannot determine that.
I was just gonna make that mention specifically, that Omega camera, the 40,000 frames per second camera. I thought it was funny because they're technically timekeepers, but they had to use a camera to tell time.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many different technologies with the timers and also the sensors and the cameras. So I think what I found really interesting digging into some of these technologies, and this is probably like we could do a whole different podcast on this, was the different use cases outside of the Olympics that you can translate these technologies to. And a lot of them, when you look at like the way that Omega actually has some technology with their cameras, is the way that they can kind of predict movement of an athlete. So like, they can predict how a swimmer is going to dive into the water. They can actually adapt that technology for things like physical therapy and see how an athlete's body could potentially react to certain therapies. So I think what's really interesting, and obviously what we talk about a lot on Game Time Tech, is how do these technologies transfer outside of kind of what we're experiencing as a fan, and where can the company take this as a business model? So I thought that part was really interesting. What else? We've got, Samsung, you got that's all you, Anshul. I think we had lots of.
Yeah, I'll give some details on that. So they did a really good job. They've been an Olympic sponsor before, and they actually did a multifaceted thing. First of all the athletes got new phones. It was funny because I saw a story where an athlete replaced her previous Samsung free phone from the Olympics with her new free phone at the Olympics. So she went from an S20 to a Flip 6 Olympic edition, and these are the new foldable phones. And what they were giving them 100 gigs of free data, which I think was supplied by Orange. And they also were using these Flip 6s for the first time ever. They were using them to take selfies on the podium when they won. So there are a lot of athletes that, a lot of the pictures that they were getting of them from the Olympics, they were all from afar, from telephoto lenses, just the traditional style. But now, with the Flip 6, I don't have a Flip 6, but I do have Flip 6. Anyways, they were able to, take selfies and be able to take photos with, a lot of their competitors are also their friends. So sometimes their team, did a sweep. But it was really cool to see. Sometimes they were just pulling out these phones. Apparently, they weren't personal devices. You're not allowed to bring personal devices to the competition floor, but they were like loans that they were able to, take pictures and then get them sent to them. And then, on top of that, they also used Galaxy S24s to do like live streams from the River Seine and from a bunch of boats and different venues. And they were helping to set up some infrastructure for different events. I think Will and I talked about this on our podcast. Out in the surfing competition, they were actually doing live broadcasts. So they had a boat getting a 5G signal out in the middle of the water, so that it could broadcast to all the cameramen and all the other cameras on site. So there was a lot of cool stuff going on there.
That's pretty interesting.
Involved in the 5G aspects of the games, but also the device side. And it was really interesting to see how engaged they were. And
how do they know where the gaps are? Like you said, they put something on the river, for the 5G. How do they know? Just so massive testing.
There's a lot of different ways to do it. If you're somewhere where it's a little bit less coverage, you just kind of know that there's no coverage, so you build it yourself. But in France, I'm sure most of that was handled by Orange with help from Samsung engineers. I believe Samsung had like 100+ people out at the games just for network engineering. So I think it's really a combination of working with the existing infrastructure, but also knowing that like for the application you're using, you might as well expect that nothing is in place.
Does any of it stay up? Like Mel was saying, what transcends, to the future? What of this technology does not, just for the games?
I don't think the the surfing thing really stayed up. But I definitely think that whatever improvements Orange made with Samsung in France probably stuck around.
I think it's, again, back to that, like, it showcasing what it can do. It's kind of what we talked about with the MLB All-Star Game, where they put up the, what you called cows, and what's the other acronym for it? This cell on wheels, those types of things. Like, that shows that they can erect those things really quickly for, like, say, emergency situations or high traffic situations, those types of things. So when there is a need for more coverage, there's, for whatever the reason, it's
Sure.
easy to then add that.
Yeah.
Okay, next topic. We've got Intel. Intel had quite a few different things happening at the games.
Yeah, I'll do the first part. Basically, a lot of the processing behind a lot of the AI, a lot of the processing behind the 5G networks, the private ones specifically, and a lot of the broadcast capabilities. A lot of that stuff was actually done on Intel Xeon hardware. Um, and they even use some Gaudi for AI stuff. So Intel was regularly being used across the games for you know, broadcast 5G, and there was also some immersive volumetric video capture as well. I didn't get to see any of that. I don't know where it was being hosted or broadcast, but they said that they were doing immersive content. Um, and yeah, it'll be really interesting if I get my hands on that stuff, the immersive stuff at least. But it's difficult when you're one of those companies that kind of is the hardware under the inside the box. That's part of the software platform that broadcasts the video. It's like you're so many layers down that it's hard to get recognized. But Xeon was everywhere at the games.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that they showcased that I was really impressed with, I mean, like you said, they were everywhere. They had a lot of different things. I think they were involved in lots of live streaming experience. But they did a lot of the accessibility stuff for the Olympics and the Paralympics. Um, and I think that part is really, interesting. And we did talk about a little bit about this on, for the MLB All-Star also. When you can create experiences that bring people in a way that haven't been able to experience the games before, like using the computer vision to then be able to, like, narrate something to, I think, for MLB, this wasn't Intel, but the haptic experience during the game. So I think Intel was really very much involved in that part of it, of like bringing in the accessibility for like visually impaired. And I think what you talked about, Xeon, they were using 3D models of like the performance center and doing indoor voice navigation through the smartphone app. So really just allowing experiences for people that may not necessarily have had those types of experiences before. And again, I'm going to quickly bring it back to real life experiences. And I've seen this recently with companies and sort of this, I guess I'm going to call it DEI pushback, where people are afraid to talk about like their DEI programs, but there are some who aren't and have come out and said, like, here's where we're really focusing on. And accessibility is a really huge one. HP is doing a ton with that, of like making sure that their workers, SAP also, making sure that they have a diverse workforce by having these accessibility technologies that allow people who are differently abled to come in and do the work. Because this brings in different, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about why it's important, but it is important that everybody is able to experience the Olympics. And I think it's really great, the work that Intel and others did at the Olympics to let people experience things that they may not have been able to experience. And a lot of it is driven by AI.
True.
So Next on our topic is Peacock streaming. So, Angel, you said you didn't really use Peacock. You were a big YouTube guy.
All YouTube TV.
Yeah, we use YouTube TV at home. We got rid of a lot of our cable, and we love YouTube TV. But we do have Peacock, and we used it and for the Olympics. And what I really liked about it was the ability to kind of jump from different things that weren't like the main event that was on NBC. So on NBC,
Yep.
you're going to see track and field, you're going to see gymnastics, all the things. But on Peacock, you could go and kind of find like the more niche events like breakdancing, which is a whole different subject. We'll talk about that. But I think the ability to capture all of that footage and have a place to stream it rather than only have just these like kind of headliner events on NBC made this year's games, I think, much more like fan friendly, you know?
Yeah, you're not held hostage to watch track and field if you want to watch the water polo or you want to watch sand volleyball or volleyball. I mean, there's some great, events to watch, and if you can't watch them, you're totally missing out. Exactly what you're saying. The app was fantastic.
So I think it definitely brought a lot of viewers to watch the breakdancing.
I missed that though.
Me too.
I can't believe you guys missed this. So I was in Dallas and we were at home. My mother-in-law is not well, and so we were just stuck in front of a television not stuck in front. We were resting in front of the television for a while, and we just got such a kick out of it. So I am super impressed by professional breakdancers. Like a good friend of mine actually was part of a breakdancing group called the Massive Monkeys. If you look them up, they're out of Seattle. They're insane talented. Like you cannot believe the stuff that they can do. So I actually look at breakdancing as like, it's an art. I don't know that I would have said like, yeah, that should be an Olympic sport. Although I've heard from these athletes, like it's incredibly hard to train for. It's like gymnastics. But there was a breakdancer from New Zealand who came in, and I think it sort of turned into like what people are considering a joke. I don't know the truth behind all of this, and I'm not here to judge any of that, but I guess
She was Australian.
Oh, Australia. Sorry, you're right. I think
she was a Kanga, not a Kiwi.
Yes, and she sort of did do like this kangaroo move thing, which I mean, there's been like way too many. I can't believe you guys haven't seen this just even on social media, but
I've seen the memes. That's literally all. All I've seen is people making fun of her dancing and how they could easily have done that at home, which is funny because I've watched a lot of the memes from the Olympics, which I would say, a lot of the Olympics I watched was on TikTok, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the memes were like people doing some kind of Olympic sport but failing miserably and saying, hey, I didn't make it to the Olympics this year.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't make fun of anybody for trying to do their craft. Like if somebody, she's getting out there on a world stage, it's more than I'm willing to do. But I do think that there's some controversy, and I don't know how true this is, so I'm not here to judge that. But I guess Peacock has removed her performance and the entire breakdancing competition from the platform because of this controversy around this. Apparently, she somehow rigged what is reported, not apparently, reportedly, she somehow like rigged her ability to even qualify for the Olympics. So they've pulled it, which I think is a huge shame for the other competitors who trained really hard and got there and did have the guts to go out there and compete on a world stage. So hopefully they'll get that figured out. But, when we look at things like integrating AI into judging, this to me is something that is very difficult to judge. So it's to me, that's like very much in gymnastics, you say, well, okay, she did a triple flip, turn, that has a specific number of points attached to it. I don't know that they've gotten the point system down for breakdancing in order for it to be a legitimate Olympic sport. And that's something I think they need to improve on, because everything else, it's either timed or there's a point system for accuracy, for difficulty. Like when you look at diving, when you look at, synchronized swimming, any of these things, there's a point system for it. And breakdancing lacked that. So I'm going to actually put that a little bit in the loser category because of that.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, AI helped when there's the accuracy thing, is what you're talking about. So it made that that judging part better, just like we talked about with the 100-meter race. AI also was a difference maker in security, how it was able to really track the security of the behaviors of all these people through the venue. So I think that, and I don't know if anybody heard of any security issues, but it was really a big part of really identifying patterns and any threats that would happen. So AI was really scattered throughout all of the Olympics in a lot of different ways.
I know that they did use AI to track social media and threats and kind of athlete sort of behavior, or like the things that people say, basically cyberbullying for the athletes. I'm not sure how much that succeeded with this breakdancing issue, but I think, what was the pickpocketing thing that you were talking about, Anshul?
Yeah, it's kind of like an unconfirmed story, but there was a story that someone had gotten their phone stolen with their tickets on it, and they couldn't get into the venue to watch one of their family members compete. So they bought tickets online to the same event, and then found their seats because they knew where their seats were supposed to be, and then paid the people who were sitting behind them to vacate those seats, and then stole their phone back, and then kicked out the people who pickpocketed them. But like I said, I think that's too neat and tidy of a story for it to be real. But I could see myself doing something like that. I'm that vindictive.
I didn't know that
I will say, I was looking into more tech related stuff. There was a lot of digital twins used for the venues to plan things out, which I don't think anybody really talked about. Like, I've been doing a lot of research for this story, but I didn't see that much talk about digital
For
twins.
security, it was used a lot. So
yeah, and then exactly. And I mean, it's crazy how much, as somebody who covers XR, digital twins they're the future for everything. Manufacturing, events, Olympics, you name it. It's the future.
Yeah. Building. I don't even cover that, and I see it all the time. Even just in like data warehousing, I mean, I see it a ton. On security, so I was in Paris right before the Olympics. I wasn't actually there for the Olympics, but I saw a lot of the setup happening for the Olympics, and the security just around the setup was massive. Complete roads blocked off, fences put up. So there definitely was a real lockdown on the area. And we had, what was it, 2016, the Paris attacks. So I think there's already a pretty heightened element of security throughout the city, but I know that was a real concern of shutting things down and really being able to have a contained area where they were building, when they're building the podiums and building the sets and everything. There was a very marked difference in how you could get around the city, even just in the days leading up to games.
Yep, and AI was a big role in that because it was able to identify, via facial recognition, if there was any security issues. It was also monitoring network traffic to see if there was any, anomalies, and all this data that was going in and out was protected, so that it was also able to not be accessed by unauthorized people. So I think that the security was pretty tight at this year's Olympics, and like you're saying, it was locked down, and AI was an influence.
Yeah.
But the digital twin is a fantastic thing. I'm sure we'll have to talk about that a little bit more. But that was a role because it was able to really see where their gaps were in security and fix them based on that digital twin of all the different venues. So,
all right.
Okay.
Next
Where
topic.
we at next?
Google Gemini.
Yeah, so this was a winner and a loser. I think we can cover that in one topic. Basically, the winner was that they were the official AI sponsor of Team USA. So they were being used in broadcasts to show immersive views added to the maps, do 3D maps of venues like Versailles, Roland Garros, and the Aquatic Center. So they were also using AI during the event for Google, and basically their goal was to have Google Gemini be front and center. They also ran some ads, and one of those ads was an ad that helped someone write a fan letter, if I remember correctly, and that was panned very hard by the public. They eventually ended up pulling that Gemini ad. So while Google got some positive press for Gemini, they also got some negative.
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing. I think there's been a few ads recently that have been pulled because people were upset about like the Apple ad where they crushed I don't know what the product was actually for. I think it was
They crushed a bunch of stuff that was supposed to fit into an iPad, like a piano and speakers
yes,
and
it was,
TV,
I think,
etc.
yeah, for the iPad. And people get all upset about it. And they say, well, it tested really well. So, and Google said the same thing, that this ad tested really well. So I'm wondering, are they having AI test the ad? Like, who's testing these ads? Because then they get just like, I didn't think the Apple thing was all that bad, to be honest. The Google one, I understand where people are coming from because they want it to be like when an athlete receives a letter from a fan, they want it to be authentic. They want it to be that kid's feelings, not just like, AI wrote it. That's really impersonal. I think what Google meant for it to be was like, I'm so starstruck, I don't even know where to start. And it was supposed to be that like, oh, well, here, we'll help you like get it, not just write it for you, but it definitely got blown up to be this like, you're not even having a personal connection to this athlete. You're just letting AI write it for you. But I don't think that was sort of the intent of the ad. And I do think people are just a little bit sensitive these days.
Yeah, and the other
For
thing that
sure.
I had was Comcast, which is a parent company of NBC. They actually had a low latency 4K feed for the Olympics, and they had multiple feeds actually, where one had Dolby Vision, and the other one was the low latency feed, so you could actually watch it in much closer to real time. And the other one was Dolby Vision, which is like really high quality video. But you could only do that over cable and using an X1 Comcast box. So it was kind of like an exclusive experience that they were offering to their customers that nobody else could get, even if you were using the Peacock app.
So do you consider that a loser or a winner?
Winner for Comcast customers, loser for everybody else.
Yeah, I wonder if that's on purpose. They're like trying to create these.
I think so. I mean, knowing Comcast, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're down to kind of our losers, and that's such a negative word. Let's say maybe they got like a runner up. Some of these were true losers. So the Team Canada drone spying scandal.
Yeah, so one of the coaches actually got suspended because one of their assistants was caught and charged with spying on the New Zealand soccer team. So this was a big scandal. Team Canada really got hit pretty hard for this. They did not end up winning the Olympics. Team USA did for women's soccer. Yeah, it's just using technology the wrong way to cheat is not great. And of course, we had some kind of drone spying scandal. It was inevitable.
So they just put a drone up over their practice field, or what?
And watch their watch their practices and film them. And I mean, to be honest, the overhead perspective is probably the best that you could have for, you know, monitoring somebody's player movements, because you can actually like draw them out afterwards.
Right.
If you're watching it from the side, it's a little bit harder to like, you know, conceptualize, but from right above, it's like the perfect angle. So it's like, it's like the most ultimate, you know, cheat code that you could have.
So I'm really surprised though that I mean, if I saw a drone overhead, I mean, I assume that they detected it fairly quickly.
I mean, if you fly it high enough, it's very hard to hear or see. So if they flew it at 400 feet, they would still be able to see what was going on below them and film it. And you might not even hear it, because drones are really, like a small drone like I have is only audible within maybe 50 to 100 feet. If it's 400 feet up, it's going to be a speck in the sky, and you might not
Yep.
even hear it.
But you would think that the Olympic security would be able to detect that as well.
I don't know if it happened on the Olympic grounds. I think it might have happened beforehand.
Mm.
I'm just taking a quick look to see, because this was reported by CBC. Because I think they were like looking into this beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So maybe, yeah.
yeah, it says the Canadian women's soccer team's title defense is off to a rocky start due to a drone scandal on the eve of the game. So it was before the games had even started. They didn't say where this happened, but yeah, it says on July 20th there were images captured when they were training in France. So it actually did happen in France.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there should not have been a drone flying. You're totally right. That's
Yeah.
a security oversight.
Yeah.
I wonder how that happened.
That is really interesting. Okay, well, I'm going to call it a loser because I just kept reading over and over again and experienced that the Olympic app was lacking. If you read reviews, so it actually kind of varies a little bit from if you look at the App Store versus Google Play Store. Maybe Android users are just more harsh, or the experience was really that different. But the app was not super well received, and I think I'm going to look at this as it was created by the International Olympic Committee. I am wondering if, if we look at it compared to like the Masters app, which we've heard many people say
Phenomenal.
the best app in sports, that was created by IBM. Like, does the Olympic Committee need an IBM or somebody to create an app for them that is going to be what fans want it to be? Because the big complaints here were like really long load times, splash screens every time you turned it on, spoilers where like you couldn't actually go and like check to see when exactly. So I see Anshul going, because that, like, if you want to go and see what time something's happening or go look for something, but it gives you the score before you don't want that, right? Like, so there were just a lot of things that I think could be improved on the app. That I think that this is one of those things that, like, do you need
Outsource it, like you're saying.
Well, I'll just add input. Most iPhone apps are better built than Android apps because the developer has more experience with iOS, and they have to build to a much smaller base of devices. So you're only building to maybe all the way back to the iPhone 8. Meanwhile, you have to build for like 50 different Android manufacturers over the last 10 years, and that's like hundreds of devices. So there's a little bit of variance there, but it shouldn't really be that bad. The development environment for apps in general is not so difficult nowadays that you can't ship an Android app and an iOS app and have them have similar experiences. To your point, the Android app has a 3.4 and the iOS app has a 4.6. So they are in a different world of experience, but maybe that has to do with the fact that maybe Apple is hand-holding some of that experience and Google isn't. And as a result, the total end product ends up being worse for Android users.
I think that's a good point, but I also think that if you look at from a user perspective, especially internationally, they're making a massive mistake to
Totally.
prioritize the iOS user. Massive mistake. So they need to take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be one of those things where it's like, you know, maybe the IOC runs on iOS.
Or maybe IOC is based in Silicon Valley. Is that, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, we know they're probably somewhere in Europe, right?
Right? So they know better. Come on. I mean,
Yeah, it's true.
the experience here looks like this was built in Silicon Valley.
I can't see how many downloads the Apple app has, but the Android app has over 10 million downloads. So maybe there's just way more Android users. So more people had feedback, and it was mostly negative.
More people. All right, we're way past our time. So I think we have one last topic, which is the kind of the eco-friendly approaches and how some of that backfired.
Yeah, you know, obviously you have to go down the sustainability route. You know, that's a big deal. But what happened is they introduced plant-based foods for the players, lower electricity, you know, no AC. They had cardboard beds. So I think the performance of the athletes was hindered a little bit due to the sustainability, you know, heightened that they were trying to make out of this year's Olympics, which I don't blame them. But the problem is, if you're not getting the protein to perform, you know, eating an impossible burger, which I'm not sure if anybody likes those or not. I'm not sure that's the route that you want to go. And no AC, where the Americans actually put window units into their sleeping dorms. So I think this is kind of an issue. But I compliment them for wanting to do sustainability, but it didn't really work out throughout. So I'd say it's more of a loser this year.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough one to plan for too, because when you look at, weather variances, and this is, I guess, where they could use a digital twin and plan for these various scenarios of, is it,
Well said.
at what point do we need more or less of something? But certainly things like temperature and nutrition will really can very much influence an athlete's performance. And some countries have the ability to go and make changes to that, bring in the units, bring in their own food. Some countries don't have the budgets for that.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's true.
it creates an unequal environment. And I think that there needs to be a better plan around that, where
Definitely
everybody has kind of equal opportunity to be on a level playing ground.
I think also if a lot of athletes, even though there's representing all these different countries, a lot of them live and train in the US. So a lot of them are getting similar equal training. But then when they get to the Olympics, it's like, oh yeah, we're from a poor country, or we're from a country that doesn't care about our athletes. Like Pakistan, I think, had one guy for the whole country, and he was I forget what it's called, where you throw the pole. But like
Pole vaulting.
Pole vaulting, yeah. No, not pole vaulting. The
Javelin?
actual javelin. Thank you.
Oh,
He was tossing a javelin, but like he had no support whatsoever. He had no training and nothing. So it's like there's this huge gap, right? Like Team USA has massive amounts of support. They don't get paid that well, but then in other countries, the Swedish pole vaulter, he was getting paid by Sweden, even though he's basically American. So there's a lot of interesting things that happen in the Olympics when it comes to equality and equity.
it's interesting there. Maybe they need to apply kind of like the F1 equaling, I don't know what they call that, but how, certain teams can spend
The financial rules.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting approach. But anyway, I think we've gotten through all of our topics. We went a little bit over time, but anything else you guys want to share?
I'm glad to see USA won gold in basketball again.
That was a fun one to watch. Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it. It's so great to watch, what were we, like 10,000 athletes from, all the different countries, and you're glued to the TV for 2.5 weeks. It's an enjoyable time, and it's great to see it all pulled together. The closing ceremonies were fantastic, but so were the opening. It was really unique. I enjoyed it.
I think it's such a fun time where people will watch sports that maybe they don't really have an interest in typically. I get interested in watching any of it, just and it's like not something I actually don't watch a lot of TV, period. But we had the TV on really a lot during the Olympics, and I just enjoyed watching the competition and the athletes, and it's really impressive what they do. So
Yeah, when are you going to watch badminton? Right? I mean, they were fantastic, or ping pong, or
oh
I
my
did watch ping pong.
the ping pong was actually insane. That was
So much
very
fun.
cool.
Well, what do we have coming up? Mel, we're going to be watching the U.S. Open in a couple weeks, so that's pretty
Yes.
exciting. And we're going to
Yes.
be continuing our Game Time Tech there live at the U.S. Open to see how data is being analyzed and what AI is going to be doing again at these great events.
Yeah.
So,
I'm excited about that.
should we wrap up? Melanie
Yep.
Brew, Robert Kramer, Anshul Sag. Game Time Tech, another great episode, everyone, and stay tuned for the next one live at the US Open. If you want to follow us, please see our Twitters, and if you have any topics, please reach out to us. We'll look forward to see you next time. Thank you very much.